Veronique is the director of the California Dairy Innovation Center at the California Milk Advisory Board. She leads key initiatives focused on advancing innovation, fostering collaboration, and promoting sustainability in the dairy industry. Frank is a UC Riverside grad. He's the founder of Be Bright Coffee, and Frank is the 2024 United States Barista Champion. We can't wait to hear his insights on coffee and consumer connection and the role of lactose-free milk there. Bob Carroll. Bob is our moderator today. He's the VP of Business Development at the California Milk Advisory Board, and he plays a pivotal role in expanding California Dairy's reach, both domestically and internationally, with a focus on innovative marketing and partnerships like this great program. And Meghan O'Leary is the VP of Innovation and Partnerships at VentureFuel. Meghan's also a two-time Olympian. She's over 17 years building partnerships with global brands and organizations such as ESPN, the US Olympic and Paralympic Committee, and the LA 28 Games. So without further ado, I will turn it over to Bob Carroll.
Thank you very much, Fred, and thank you to our panelists for joining today. You know, this is a topic that we are very excited about in the dairy industry, and really just to kind of start things off, I'd like to ask, why are we talking about lactose-free dairy, lactose-free milk today? And Veronique, we'll start with you.
Yeah, thanks, Bob. It's really an honor. I mean, the only one without medals here, but, I'll try to earn one today. But anyway, no, it's really important because we've just heard, right, the trends in population and the changes. Of course, we're all born with the ability to digest lactose, right? It's in the milk, it's mother's milk. But as we age, and we can lose that ability and become lactose intolerant or love less lactose. And right now, actually, boomers, about 20% of boomers are lactose intolerant. But we see what's really amazing is that we see the changes in at least the perception of intolerance. People who avoid lactose grows with each generation. So Gen X was a little bit more. Now we see Gen Z, about over 40% are avoiding lactose, right? And particularly of interest to us in California, that a large portion of our population is of Hispanic descent, and we see lactose intolerance rates even higher in that population, about 1 out of 3 individuals. So, you know, for us in California, right, promoting innovation, we say we have to worry about making sure we have products that meet the needs of that population.
Excellent.
If that makes sense.
Thank you, yeah. And Meghan, we've been running what we're calling an innovation sprint, really alongside this accelerator this year, focused on lactose-free. And can you tell the audience a little bit about that project and what's really come about from that?
Yeah, thanks, Bob. It's a really exciting project because I think it's a nice complement to what CMAB is doing with the Excelerator and bringing really innovative concepts into the market that feature dairy. And in this case, we've conducted a innovative co-development project that's taking lactose-free dairy into the market. The chosen vessel is coffee. That's why I'm so excited you're here. And identifying a way to feature lactose-free dairy as an ingredient in a coffee beverage that gives it, some market interest, but really market excitement. I mean, Veronique, you said, what we've learned from it too is that it's not that lactose-free dairy is necessarily, there's a demand for it. We've, in the early research, we identified that there certainly is a demand for it. Coffee shops, a general statement, don't necessarily have it on hand because they perceive a lack of demand. So we're identifying a way to bring in some excitement, market around this concept of a lactose-free dairy beverage that has a coffee angle, and really drive awareness to not only the benefits, obviously, of lactose-free dairy milk, but the taste, the nutrition, all of the things that you expect out of a dairy beverage. But again, meeting the market where it is and really creating a marketing idea that features it and makes people really excited to try it. So,
excellent, thank you. And Frank, it's really amazing that you were able to be here today. At the very beginning of this project, I said, we need to find a celebrity barista, and we found one. So you won the US Barista Championship, and I know that lactose-free milk was involved in your creation. I wonder if you can tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so when you compete at the US Barista Championships, you present 3 drinks, and the second drink that we present is a milk-based beverage, or a cappuccino, so to say. And so as I was preparing for this year, I wanted to pick a milk that will complement my espresso the best, and also really do it on purely taste alone, because that's what ultimately, for this competition, that's what we're graded on. And so, after doing a few blind tests, it came down to lactose-free milk. And I think that's really exciting in the sense that it wasn't chosen for any other reason but for the taste alone. And so the fact that it really paired well with our espresso was really great. And one of the things that we did with it is that we freeze distilled it, which is a process of taking milk, freezing it, and then distilling it down to 50% of its original weight. And when you do that, you get all the fats, sugars, proteins, and all the good stuff. And then to further, I guess, enhance it, we evaporated the milk by simmering it for 20 minutes. And that was the winning combination for that milk to pair with our espresso, and helped me win the U.S. Barista Championship.
Well, that's fantastic. It sounds delicious, and I hope I can try that someday. I really want to talk a little bit about the benefits of lactose-free milk. And when we think about the benefits of really any food, taste always comes first, in my opinion. Food has to taste good, beverages have to taste good, and nutrition. And so if we zero in on taste first, Veronique, can you talk a little bit about the benefits related to taste?
Sure, thank you. And I mean, you said it, but we had to prove it, right? And now we come from a science perspective. So we work with Chapman University. We conducted some consumer tests, large panels, where consumers were given 4 different types of coffee to drink, blinded, right? I mean, they didn't know what they were tasting. So coffee with regular milk, coffee with lactose-free milk, and coffee with oat and almonds. I mean, we're not milks, because they are the most commonly offered, and asked to choose, right, to judge, give their preference on those products. And for both the 2% milk and whole milk, lactose-free milk came way above. I mean, really, it's hard to get statistical significance with 100 consumers, but it was way above all the others. And that was not just the overall flavor, but also the aroma, the aftertaste, appearance, and texture on all the factors. So we're like, wow, And so they did that work. They also did some work looking at would consumers be willing to try, right, the lactose-free milk if it were available. As you mentioned, it's not on the menu, so people don't think of ordering it. And right now, we just got the result last night. They did additional work on latte. So where you have even more milk, to see if at some point would that sweetness of the lactose-free milk become an issue. Just looked at the data this morning. No, same thing. Lactose-free milk is a winner. So consumers like it better. So I think those coffee chains will offer that product. Will have a competitive advantage, right? Because their product is better. But as you said, it's taste, and taste, right? There's other advantages, but we don't have time for that.
No, we can. We can loop back on nutrition. We'll talk some more.
Yeah, nutrition, exactly, and also the clean label, right? Milk is milk, whereas some of the other products have a lot of additives. But I'll shut up.
No, that's great. But Frank, your winning coffee beverage actually sort of proved out that, or Veronique's research proved out what you had found in your contest. And can you talk a little bit about really why your product won, what the taste benefits were of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the fact that lactose-free milk is on its own naturally sweet because of the process of removing, breaking down lactose into glucose lactose into glucose and galactose. That process, when you break that chain, it creates kind of this enhanced sweetness in the milk. And I think, maybe on its own, it's has this artificial sweetness to it. But I think when it's paired with coffee, I think some of the coffee flavor kind of pairs well with that. And so it kind of gives it this natural sweetness that I think regular milk or, other non-dairy milks can offer, in the sense that it's still natural. It's still just present in the product itself. It's not added sugar or anything like that.
So I hear as a marketer that lactose-free milk is the perfect pairing with coffee. That's kind of what it sounds
That's what I'm
like.
hearing too.
So that's fantastic. And Meghan, what did the research that was part of the Sprint process tell us?
Yeah, and all the things we're hearing anecdotally. So in terms of the research and how we conducted the work is that we leveraged two companies, TasteWise and AI Palette, to do really a massive market scan, focusing on the US market and California, and understanding what are the trends. So seeing in the last 2 years, over 131% CAGR growth in lactose-free milk, and then looking at the intersection with coffee, over 152% CAGR growth over the last 2 years. So the demand is there. And as we think about what drives demand, it's flavor, it's taste. And some of the more anecdotal pieces were, the scan looks at everything from, social media, what's being posted, what are the discussions, what's on menus, what's on Google searches. So the search for lactose-free milk increasing in terms of a better understanding of how does this complement other things, coffee being a big driving force in that. Things like, I love adding lactose-free milk to my instant coffee because it's sweeter and it brings a flavor element different than the alternatives. So it's been fun to identify, obviously, that it's meaningful and that there's demand, but the data really supports it and how people are talking about it in the market as well.
Excellent. And Veronique, I do want to loop back to talk about some of the nutrition benefits and other benefits of lactose-free milk. That'd be fantastic to hear about.
No, for sure. I mean, we know that that lactose-free milk, or any milk, right, has a high-quality protein. We talked about, of course, the electrolytes as well, right? The minerals there. But again, I think the simpleness of milk, the fact that it doesn't have all these additional additives in it, is very important to consumers. Not so much in coffee shop because you don't see the label, but when they make that product at home, right? And we know what they see in coffee shop, sometimes they try to duplicate at home as well. So there's definitely an interest in just clean label, simple products with good quality protein.
Excellent. Yeah, milk. And we heard in the beginning of this expo all the wonderful benefits of milk and the fact that consumers are really realizing it, and lactose-free makes it accessible to a group of people who otherwise might not be able to have milk. From a retail perspective, it's really interesting to look at the trends, and we see that lactose-free milk is growing at 9.1% in California in the latest 52 weeks in retail. And plant-based beverages, the alternatives, almond, oat, et cetera, are declining at about 7.4%. So a huge gap. We're super excited. Go dairy. We're super excited that dairy is coming back, and that honestly, California's leading the way in this category in fluid milk, where plant-bases were making so many gains. But yet we don't quite see that trend translating into coffee shops. And so there's certainly, I hope and we believe in opportunity, but there's some barriers. And I wanted to talk about some of the barriers. And Frank, really starting with you. You're the expert here and would love to hear what you think the barriers are to lactose-free milk making its way into coffee shops.
Yeah, I think there are a few barriers that I can think of. I think one is part of it is education, right? Consumers, but also business owners and cafe owners not understanding what lactose-free milk is exactly. I think they have an understanding of a concept of, it's a dairy without any lactose, but how is that process, made into a lactose-free option? So I think there needs to be a little bit more education on understanding that, it's a very natural process of removing lactose, and that way I think business owners can really get behind it and understand it. And at the end of the day, as business owners, we want to know what we're selling. We want to know, how things are made, so that we can champion them when when we're serving them behind bar. I think another thing is just product availability. Part of it is supply chain issues. We, as well, especially in LA, we as coffee shop owners, we rely on our suppliers to provide our milks, our alternative milks, and so they'll have a catalog specific to the different suppliers we work with, and more times than not, there's not a lactose-free option. And so if we're relying on a supplier to supply us our milks and our dairies and our non-dairy milks, and they don't have lactose-free option, we're not going to necessarily go out of our way and go to a market and do a market run just for lactose-free milk. So I think making sure that there is supply throughout the supply chain and that there is a steady flow of that, so that we as business owners or coffee shop owners can order it and use it at our coffee shops. And I think the last thing is part of it is, I think, packaging design. I think there is, I think part of the reason why non-dairy, especially oat milk in general, really gained a lot of market share is their packaging design is, a little bit more unique, a little more colorful. And I think there is kind of some of that kind of draw for coffee shop owners to see packaging that, if it's out on the bar, they can, still be proud of it and be happy to use it. And so I think some of that could be more played into lactose-free milk. And even, one of the things that we talk about is shelf stability as well. One of the benefits of non-dairy milk is that it's shelf stable. And so on the supply chain side of things, they don't need to be cold chaining it. They can be, bringing or shipping milk without it being in stored refrigerators. And also shelf life is a little bit longer. And so those are things that we kind of factor into when we buy non-dairy. And I think when we think about dairy, we don't really think about it being a shelf-stable product. And so I think when you're trying to compare and trying to think about it competing alongside non-dairy, those are some of the things that you would have to consider.
Excellent. Thank you. Some great considerations across the board. And Veronique, from kind of the broader dairy perspective or from other aspects, what do you see as barriers to lactose-free milk making its way in coffee
all
shops?
the above, indeed, and we really appreciate your insight. We've heard mentioned one way or another, and I know you, Bob, in business development are working to remove those barriers. But I think I also see an opportunity, right? Until very recently, and probably to some extent, a lot of the large coffee shop charge a hefty premium for the plant-based, right? Because they are a little bit more expensive for sure. And as I say, it's the economy, right? It's all about the economy. I mean, consumers are balking against these 70 cents, 90 cents premium, right? And now we've heard that some chains are removing that premium. But that's so one of the reasons they were saying, well, we're not going to use lactose-free because it's more expensive than regular milk, which is true because it's a premium in processing it. But all of a sudden, now we see ourselves, you see, in a way, more competitive because we're a less expensive option for high-quality lactose-free option for coffee shops. So I hope this will work in our favor, if I would say, because that's what we've seen, at least in Europe, right, where the chain after chain has not, I mean, due to consumer pressure, has had to remove that premium. And all of a sudden, we're next in line in terms of being a healthy option that meets consumer needs, but is affordable. And consumers care about affordability. Everyone cares about margins, but affordability. Right?
That's great. So it sounds like we may have an opportunity now to be enhancing margins versus the competition, the plant-based competition, especially if that trend kind of follows of dropping that surcharge. And we have a preference on taste, and we have some supply chain issues to resolve and some marketing and education to do, which is really, I think, it's a good challenge, but there's an opportunity here. And, as we think about affecting change, the dairy industry in particular, like, what are your ideas on how we could do that? Like, if this was going to make its way into, get the logistics problem solved and make it available, how would you introduce it, Frank? What do you recommend?
I think that's a good question. I think promoting lactose-free milk, I think it's still so associated with dairy milk that I think if there could be some sort of shift in the way that consumers and the way that coffee shop owners can perceive it as a way of competing against their non-dairy options, I think that could be a viable way to get people to get behind it more. Because I think because we're comparing it to dairy alone, it doesn't seem like an option that we want to kind of burden ourselves to carry. And so I think if we think of it as another like a non-dairy option where it's like, it's a, I think, right now with big chains kind of removing that cost of alternative milks, I think even with that, it's still the lactose-free milk is, sorry, I'm trying to gather my thoughts here on this. I think because it's a slightly more expensive option than regular dairy milk, we can still charge. Maybe there could be a little bit of an upcharge on the coffee shop side to compete against the cost of the actual production of that milk.
And that's a really good point. I think as a coffee shop owner, you're clearly thinking, where is this going to source volume from, right? Is it going to source volume from a higher margin yet dairy milk, or source more volume from the alts, which is going to help my total mix of margin? And that's something that we could probably do as an industry too, to really help coffee shop owners like yourself understand, where is this going to source volume from? How does this grow your total demand and bottom line as well? So that's some great feedback. Thank you. And Meghan, how about from your perspective? How would we introduce this into the coffee shop world?
I think we heard some really interesting things from the keynote and Lauren, and a lot of it was about positioning, and in terms of, and I love some of the things you said too, is that, lactose free, it's the same nutritional benefits. It actually tastes better. It behaves quite similar. And so being able to tell that story in a really compelling way for the consumer to feel safe, the clean label aspect, because that's the health and wellness. We heard that is a huge drive in terms of consumer demand and consumer consumption of, I want something that's going to be good for me and taste good. I want something that's going to be elegant and make me feel like I'm having an indulgent experience. And so that's a lot of the kind of the approach we took, is how do we achieve those things for the consumer that is, they are taking the time to walk into a coffee shop, pay for a beverage, many of which they might be able to make at home, but want to have an experience. And how do you enhance that experience and really capture that lactose-free story? And that's why I love some of the things you said about being able to differentiate it, but in the positive way of, this is a special enhancer to your experience. So.
Excellent, thank you. And Veronique?
Yeah, no, I agree. It's all about innovation, right? And creating new usage occasion. We don't kind of want to cannibalize anybody's business, so, but certainly add value to the experience, and work with coffee shop owners so they can attract more folks to their stores with innovative offerings. So I think that's what you're going to show us, right? As an example.
Yeah, we're going to have that at the end, but
Cool.
that is the way in that we're thinking of something really unique and different that will draw attention to it and be perhaps a limited time offer to start, but something that could really be a vessel to educate consumers and gain excitement around this. So that's fantastic. I think that we have some time for questions. If anyone has questions, there are microphones on both sides here, or you can raise your hand. We could hear you.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. I'm just curious, outside of pairing with coffee, can you speak to some of the consumer trends around consumption for lactose-free? Like, I hear taste is really paramount, but I'm curious, like, outside of taste, like, is it like a different set of consumers, or is there something shifting in the way consumers are perceiving lactose-free, just in general for fluid dairy?
Do you want to take that first, Veronique?
Sure. Your team also has done a lot of work
I
on
can
this,
talk
so
about
maybe
it
you
too.
should answer.
Sure.
But just a distinction, again, from a technical perspective, there's two types of lactose-free products, right? Those, as you described, which are hydrolyzed, right, that have a little sweeter, and then you have a lactose-free product where the lactose has been removed through filtrations. So I think both segments are growing, and they're a little different in the characteristics. So a lot of opportunities. But go ahead, Bob. You have all the data on your...
Well, I mean, I mentioned the retail data, the extreme growth, and with almost commensurate declines in the plant-based, there's a lot of people switching back to real dairy. And as we think about that group of consumers who is choosing lactose-free or perhaps they just can't digest dairy as well. There's discomfort in the digestion after consuming dairy. Amongst those group of consumers, as they're switching back to dairy milk, I think there's a few reasons. There's no question that this idea of consumers returning back to real whole foods is playing into it. You know, when you look at the ingredient lists of pretty much all of the alternative beverages, there's a lot of ingredients, right? Some that are hard to understand what they are. There's been a lot of press about oat milk in particular, which had just a really big run for a while. And what people are saying now, and I think that it was true all along, but they're starting to realize it, and there's press about it, is that when the oats are that highly processed, it really spikes the sugar faster. You know, it raises the sugar levels, and it maybe isn't as good for you as people thought it was. And I think, but again, as a whole, when you look at that return to dairy, there's price value. You know, the price of dairy milk, especially for that wonderful, perfect nutritional package that you have in real milk, is lower pretty significantly than the plant-based alternative. So I can get, and of course I'm biased, so I'm gonna say that up front. But you know, I get better nutrition at a lower price, and I have to stretch my dollars even further right now in the grocery store with inflation and everything else. It's driving people to return back to dairy. That's my 2 cents on it. I don't know if anyone else has any other thoughts.
No, I mean, nothing new to add other than, you know, in terms of, you mentioned the interest in other products. Of course, there's, you know, ways to infuse it, like lactose-free cheese and kind of other ways that we've been exploring. You know, coffee was, and the reason I'm sitting up here, was the vessel, the channel by which we were wanting to really drive awareness, drive interest. But of course, when you think about the great American product that features cheese, you know, pizza, burgers, when we can start to think about what are other things that people consume that are interesting, that you can get that lovely flavor, that nutrition, that taste. And so that's an untapped territory in terms of some of the work we did, but it's certainly an area to explore.
Yeah, and we were doing a conference call kind of getting ready for this panel, and Frank's wife, Michelle, had a list of reasons why, too. So, I mean, there's just, I think consumers are paying a lot more attention now, which is fantastic. Yeah, thank you, Michelle. Yes.
Right behind you. Yep. Thank you, everyone. Frank, I had a question for you about coffee. I love espresso drinks. Trying to be not a champion like you at home, but trying to start my journey and, you know, realizing a lot of the coffee shops either have non-dairy milk products or they have whole milk. And I know it's hard, I guess, to get that froth, to get that crema, right, with maybe non-dairy alternatives. But now they're making oat milk, or they have been making oat milk barista-style products. Is the lactose-free milk, does that impact any type of creation that you make behind the coffee pot? Does that have any implications to taste or profile or anything?
I mean, so like you were saying, when it comes to presentation and specifically to latte art, non-dairy milks definitely suffer. Like, you know, I'm in the world of geeky baristas, and we also have a latte art competition. I've never been to a latte art competition where we use a non-dairy milk because it just isn't great for doing latte art with. For me, when I was preparing for the U.S. Barista Championship, and then I used the lactose-free milk, I saw no issues with steaming it, with doing latte art. You know, part of the thing we're scored on is visual presentation, and so even with lactose-free milk, I got the highest score on visuals. So I was able to achieve the kinds of design I wanted with the lactose-free milk.
Yeah,
That's
maybe
really
I can
cool.
add a little bit to this too. I'll be happy to introduce you to our researcher, which is here, Dr. Likon at Cal Poly, St. Louis Obispo. We did some trial with actually 18 different barista products, or so-called barista products, lactose-free milks and so forth, looking at foam stability and all the indexes. And again, all this product, despite all the addition of gelling agent and emulsifiers and so forth, don't perform any better. And lactose-free milk was fine on all the tests. I'm be glad to share that with you.
Any other questions? This will be the last one. All right, well, I guess that was the last one.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. We have something pretty exciting here that I'd just like to introduce. We sort of alluded to it before, that we've been working really through this sprint with VentureFuel, and one of the outputs are some really unique concepts for a lactose-free dairy milk in coffee. And so, Meghan, do you want to talk about that and kind of
Yeah, absolutely. That was a great last question to tee up where we are. And so we've kind of been teasing it throughout the panel as this innovative sprint work. Yeah, maybe I'll step over to the side so everyone can see. That we're working on co-developing with CMAB a product to bring to market that features lactose-free milk in a variety of ways that really excites the market. And so the approach we took, we actually have over 20 concepts. Today you get to see 5. And the approach we took was, how do we also bring in the other interesting things that are happening in coffee shops in terms of flavors and ingredients that people are interested in, that people are, whether it's emerging, is it a mature, is it really early? And so we kind of did a little bit of a, kind of a spectrum to inform these beverage concepts, both in, latte, cappuccino, both in form as well as flavor profile, and, what we're starting to see in terms of interest and really interesting things that are being done. No judgment, Frank. These are, and so these were derived from, the 2 companies that I mentioned earlier, but a really, a broad but also deep scan of the market in terms of consumer interest, consumer behavior, demand, what's on menus, what's being bought, what's being searched for, what's being posted to social media. So just left to right and bottom, you see strawberry iced matcha latte. There's been an increase in strawberry, probably fruit in general. But in terms of the, not only the aesthetic, I love that you mentioned, people want a pretty drink, whether it's a pumpkin spice latte and has the orange during fall. You can imagine drinking this in the spring or over the summertime. And then, moving to the right, creamy Vietnamese boba coffee. I thought this was a really interesting mix of, there are boba shops, there are coffee shops. In terms of the interest of starting to bring in, especially as we thought about the California market, other flavors that aren't, just the traditional latte or the traditional coffee. How to, Southeast Asia is there, a lot of interesting things are coming out in terms of the flavors and the ingredients. And so doing a mix, you see that creamy. I should also say that these not only inform, but the titles of the drinks have been informed by what people are talking about. So, that creaminess, and as we think about the behavior of lactose-free milk, like tapping into that really those non-dairy milks can't evoke. They can't really behave the same. And then to the right, cinnamon nitro latte. Nitro is something that we see in coffee shops. Cinnamon is still a favorite, but also it's still a growing flavor. This is probably a little bit more of the traditional flavor profile that you see up here, but one that I didn't put the scores up here, but scored super high in terms of consumer trend. And then left to right quickly, sweet tres leches horchata coffee. As we think about, it's the California Milk Advisory Board. You mentioned the, Hispanic population and lactose-free, 1 in 3. And so really wanting to, again, like you'll see kind of these different flavor profiles, but calling on what's interesting in the California market. If we're going to roll this out to a California coffee shop chains and multiple stores, we have to speak to the demographic and the population. And then pistachio cappuccino. I mean, who doesn't want a green coffee? But pistachio, just like strawberry, is it's an ingredient that we're seeing really across the board.
And thank you all for the great panel. That was amazing.